What is it like being a Jamaican living in Brunei? Hi, I'm Xavier Murphy, the founder of Jamaicans.com. And today in Jamaicans to the World, I talked to Keith Russell, a Jamaican who lived in Brunei. Keith, how are you, sir?
Good night, my brother. Night here in where we are. Probably day where you are. Yes, obviously morning. But yeah, respect and love.
So, which part of Jamaica you come from?
Me's a town man. I grew up in Kingston, Duane Park to be exact. And I went to Duane Park Primary School. Um, yeah, so I'm a town Kingstonian man. Ride the bus to town, ride the bus to Papine. Yeah.
So, did you attend high school in Jamaica?
Yes, I attended Norman Manley High,
All
and
right.
yeah, those were some good days, good memories. Riding the number 40 bus from Pembroke Hall to Maxfield to Norman Manley, and then walking up to school in the afternoon up to halfway tree, and then waiting for the halfway tree bus to Duane Park. Those were some really great memories.
So, is there a teacher from Norman Manley High that impacted your life that you want to give a shout out to or big up to?
Oh, without a doubt, she's the reason why I became a teacher. The last time I checked, she was still alive. It's her name is Olive McNeil. She was the vice principal at the time. I walked into her class and I heard this absolutely beautiful voice, originally from Dominica, and I just fell in love with her voice and her diction, her enunciation, and just sat up front and was keen to learn English. And she gave me, those black and white hardcover exercise books. She gave me one of those, and she
Yes.
said, "Seeing that you love to chat, why don't you go and write a lot of the things that you chat about in class?" And that's how I became interested in writing, and that's how I became interested in teaching, because Mrs. Olive McNeil, also my accounts teacher, Miss Kedu, who I am told eventually went to live in the Bahamas. I was so poor at maths. I was rubbish at maths. I don't know why I decided to do accounts, but for some reason, Miss Kedu broke it down so easy for me to understand. And yeah, all shout out and respect to Mrs. McNeil and Miss Kedu.
All right. So tell us the story of how you got to Brunei.
Let's go back a bit. So obviously, I went to Michael College, then University of the West Indies, and I left Jamaica in 2000 to the UK to work as a teacher. I spent a couple of years in the UK. Then I kind of wanted to explore the world, so I went abroad in a couple of countries to work, like the UAE. I worked in Spain. I worked in the south of France, and a very good friend who went to church with us in the UK at the time. Her husband works with the Royal Brunei Air Force. That's the airplane that carries the Sultan of Brunei and his family. He's an engineer. And they went over there and they said, "Look," I said, "Where's this place on the map? I've never heard of this country, Brunei." And then I looked at it on the map, and there it was, a tiny dot sandwiched between Malaysia and Singapore, and it's part of Borneo, and the larger part of Borneo is Malaysia. So I said, "Wow, Brunei, 300,000 people thereabout." And she said, "Look, when you come here, it will remind you of Jamaica." And I said, "Okay, let's give Brunei a chance. Let's go on and work in Brunei." So I applied at the time to work with a company called CFBT. They were recruiting um, literacy coordinators to go and help develop, train the local Bruneian teachers in,
Okay.
in teaching literacy. And so I was part of that batch, one of the first batch to go over. And when I arrived, it was like, wow, I'm in Jamaica. There were palm trees, coconut trees everywhere. There were banana trees, breadfruit trees. And it was just it's a small place. you're driving on the road and it's basically empty sometimes, and I'm like, wow, I'm in Jamaica, um, minus the reggae music, and I fell in love with it.
Well, well, tell us a little bit about the people in Brunei.
So Bruneian people are Malay, um, and the religion is Muslim. So it's an Islamic country. It's a constitutional, no, what you call it, absolute monarchy. He's one of the last absolute monarch still left in the world, the Sultan of Brunei, who was probably one of the richest guy in the world as well. Um, the people are extremely warm. They're really friendly, um, but they're very quiet. They're not extroverts, so to speak. You'll more likely make friends with a Bruneian, but more likely you'll have to kind of initiate the friendship. And they're warm. They'll
Mm.
invite you into their home. They'll cook for you. They'll stuff your face with food endlessly. And then the next one will invite you over tomorrow, and you're like, listen, I can't do this. And you end up with the whole week going to four people's house and absolutely stuffed. So yeah, Bruneian people are absolutely brilliant. They're lovely. They're warm. They're they're very smart people.
Right.
Um, and
Okay.
they know Jamaica. They have knowledge of Jamaica. They love Jamaica, obviously because Jamaican cultural export is global.
So what type of questions are asked when you tell them you're Jamaican?
First thing, wow, Bob Marley. Um, and they said, "Oh, Jamaica is like here because we see beach and we see palm trees." You know, when I show them pictures of where I'm from, they're like, "Whoa, it's like the same." Um, so yeah, they were
Nice.
really, really interested in that.
Any customs you found amongst the Bruneian people, right? That's the term.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, any customs you found that were very interesting and unique?
yeah. First of all, Bruneian people is what you call, this kind of safe face idea. They don't like to be publicly shamed. So you have to really know when you're having a conversation, especially if you're working with Bruneian children. There's just us Jamaicans, we'll talk anything, we don't care, we'll shame each other. In Brunei it's not like that. They're really polite, and they like to have polite conversations. During Ramadan, after Ramadan, when the sun sets for iftar, Bruneians, like I said, will invite you to their house, and they will stuff your face, and they always have like competitions who would put on the best buffet meal. And they literally come to work and says, Dr. Keith, did you like my buffet meal? And then the next one is say, you're coming to my house tonight, we see the best buffet meal. And you're like, okay, I'm gonna have to starve myself for the whole day. You're going to eat, eat, eat. Yeah. Although they are a Muslim country, Islamic country, um, they they still they do not separate each other as they do in like places like Saudi Arabia and the UAE. So women and men do sit together. They share the same staff room, the same hospitals. That was different. I noticed when I worked in the UAE and I went to the hospitals and the rooms were divided. There were men on one side and women on one side. In Brunei, they're largely a kind of a different interpretation of Islam. So you find that, and they're also welcoming of other religion openly. There are loads of churches in Brunei, and you could practice your faith openly,
Okay.
and they're very, very accepting.
So that is great. I was gonna say that for that week of Ramadan, you don't have to cook.
No, no, you don't. And you have to brace yourself. So you have to turn down some offers and say, okay, I came to your house on Monday. I'll go to someone's house on Wednesday, because you have to give yourself time to
to,
empty,
re- to
because
recover. So, so staying on the food topic, if you could name two things that you say, listen, if you go to Brunei, you have to try these two things. what would those two things be?
Brunei, their food. You have to be careful in Brunei. Their food, their staple food is like Jamaica. It's lots of rice, yam, and man, those food. If you're prone to diabetes, you've got to watch that. I think Brunei there's is such a rich country in terms of fruits and vegetable. I used to love they have this bright red fruit that almost look like pomegranate, but the outside is very very brittle, very rough outside. But when you kind of open it, it's just this juice, this sweet. And I used to love how they used to make their rice with fish inside the banana leaf. So you would see them. Bruneians love street food, and you could just drive up on an evening. That's what I used to love after work. Drive up and just stop by. There's somebody on the street selling, and they used to sell these rice and chicken or pork wrapped up in a banana leaf, and they used to cook it on this open wood fire. And when you open it, the aroma and the scent. But please, you've got to have that at least once a week, because if you do, it's very indulgent, and it's also very,
So it sounds like you had, fresh fruit and fruit growing there. So you had mangoes.
oh, mangoes, breadfruit, papaya, banana, every fruit that you can think of. Because Southeast Asia, Malaysia, Brunei, Vietnam, those places, they're very tropical, very fruitful, and it's really like Jamaica. Um, parts of Brunei still, because it's Borneo, a large part of the land is still jungle, because it's a small population of about 300, 400,000 people. So you'll be driving for miles and you just see jungle. You'll see lots of monkeys as well. They'll come out because a lot of the houses the forests have been cleared, the jungle have been cleared to build houses. So, if you don't like the creeper crawlers, the lizards, the monkeys, sometimes they'll show up on your veranda or your backyard, because your houses was part of a jungle that was
Right.
cut down to make space. Yeah.
Wow. Cost of living. What's the cost of living like there?
Very very cheap, and that's why I loved Brunei. Brunei is rich. They make oil and natural gas, and that's why they're so rich. They produce their own, refine their own natural gas. So when I went there, I almost keeled over, because I went to the tank, the pump, full my car, and I paid $15 to full my car. I'm like, what? Then I realized that petrol gas is heavily subsidized, so you just drive in and you just pull up and put gas in your car, and you don't need to worry about paying $100 or so. Food is very, very cheap in Brunei. Only thing that's costly is clothing, because obviously that's imported.
Okay.
Because Brunei is not a manufacturing country. All the shoes and clothes is imported. So that's a bit pricey. But food, man, you could eat Brunei until you get obese, because the food is cheap, cheap, cheap.
And good. It sounds like it's good too.
And good, and good. Lots of they're like similar to Jamaica. They use lots of flavor and spices in their food. Asian food is lots of flavor and spices. That's why Jamaican food is like that, because we have the fusion of Africa, the Indians, and the Chinese, and so on. All that fusion together. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. So if I was to visit Brunei, tell me, at the top of your list, you'd say, Xavier, if you come, you gotta come during this season. Or maybe you say, Xavier, you have to visit this place.
Mm.
Or you have to watch this event, the sun setting over this. What would that one thing be you'd say, Xavier, if you visit, this is what you have to do?
Well, Brunei, to piggyback on that, Brunei is slowly opening up to a tourism industry. It is still largely undiscovered. Most people go to their most famous neighbor, Singapore. It's less than an hour to fly over to Singapore, and Brunei and Singapore use the same dollar, so you can use Brunei and Singapore and dollar interchangeably. So Malaysia and Brunei and Singapore are the well-known neighbors. So Brunei doesn't have a tourist industry per se. Um, but
So,
it's a
so
subtropical climate, so the best time to go is out of the rainy season. So when you're coming on to December, January, up to February, March, April, where it rains.
right.
Because in Brunei, when it rains, it pours.
Yes, the
Yes,
monsoon, I'm sure.
yes, yeah,
But
yeah,
maybe not tourists, right? Maybe
yeah,
not a tourist attraction.
yeah,
Maybe there is a festival that you say, Xavier, if you come, there's this festival in Brunei that it is beautiful, right? Or it may be a lake or a beach, or it doesn't have to be tourists.
yeah.
What would you suggest?
Well, one thing about Brunei is when you go to Brunei, you'll find out you will be shocked because the beaches are beautiful, they're lovely, but they're virtually empty because Bruneians are very superstitious. They believe that spirits live in the ocean. So you don't see
Oh,
lots of local Bruneians at this beach. You will see lots of expats, Filipinos, British, whatever, having barbecue. So you'll drive for miles on beach and you'll just see empty beaches. And that's perfect because you can just have a spot for yourself and it's like you're there on your own, a nice picnic on the beach. The capital, Bandar Bandar is very, very beautiful. Once you get there, there's a beautiful grand mosque with a golden dome. That's absolutely beautiful. The Sultan built that. Also, the Sultan's palace. He has many palaces, but one of his main palaces, he opens it a certain time of year, and you can go in and you can see the palace, and you're like, oh my God, I can sleep in the entrance alone. It's absolutely
wow.
breathtaking. Brunei is quite small, so you can literally drive from one end of the island to the other. And so the at Chempong Water Village is an attraction that many people go to see. It's literally a community on that's built on the water, on the river.
Oh,
So they're on
wow.
stilts, on sticks, and people you how you get there is literally on boats. So you take these are the
Oh, wow.
canoes, and it's just breathtaking. It's amazing, and it's been there for centuries. Um,
Okay.
Bruneians love their royal family. They love their royalty, and a, a very very famous sight to behold is if you're walking or jogging at 4:45 to 5 o'clock in the afternoon. You're most likely going to see the Sultan passing, coming from his northern home in Tutong back to his palace in Bandar, and he'll most certainly wave at you on the road. And he'll say, oh, the Sultan, the king
Nice.
waved at me. Now, I tell you a little story, Xavier. They said to me, my employees came here and says, Keith, you are been selected to meet the Sultan. I said, oh my God, I've lived in the UK all these my years and I've never met the Queen. And I'm in Brunei and I'm going to meet the royal family. And they came over to school and they gave us all the protocol. The Sultan, you have to bow and you don't stretch your hand out unless he does, and so on. So I went to the function and I sat there. And I thought I was going to meet the Sultan, go up and shake his hand. I rehearsed the stuff I was going to say to him. And the Sultan came, and the Sultan was walking out, and everybody there says, "Go on, keep going." And it was like a throng of crowd like this trying to touch the Sultan's hand, you know. And here I thought that the Sultan was going to come over to me personally and have a conversation about the best suit ever, dressed up, ready to have a conversation with the Sultan, and missed the opportunity because the Sultan was just passing by and waving, and people were stretching out trying to shake his hand.
Your son the best.
Some the best. But that's how they greet the Sultan anyway. He has an official time of the year every Christmas. He
Right.
opens his palace and he sits on in his throne on his chair. And Bruneians, local Bruneians and others would walk in to him and greet him, and he will give them money. He would give them money, $50 or $100. But normally, if he goes to a function and you see him, he just goes out and do a royal walk, and people just throng him to shake his hand.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow. You just said they love their royalty. They love their
yeah,
royalty.
yeah.
what
They
did
do.
you most what did you enjoy doing? So let's say you had a day off or it was a holiday. What activities you loved doing personally?
Yeah, so my family and I were there. My son my son was a little baby, and my wife. Brunei in Brunei, their week days of the week is very different. So they go from Monday to Thursday. Then Friday off is a Sabbath. Muslim, they go to the mosque. So Friday school is off. Then you go back to school on Saturday. Then you get Sunday off. So your weekend is split. So it was
Mhm.
very difficult because Malaysia is next door. So what a lot of people do, what a lot of the expats do, because they can't drink in Brunei, they would drive over across the border to Malaysia, and just as they get across the border, there's a bar shop, and they would sit there and buy alcohol, you know. But we sometimes would drive over to the border to sightsee Simpang, to go across the Malaysian border, or we would go to the beach, that family. Sometimes we could go to a hotel called the Capital Hotel. That's the biggest hotel in Brunei, and my God, it's like the Taj Mahal. It is stunning, beautiful. But the beauty about it, Brunei is so cheap that you could literally, we used to go there on Fridays and have a buffet meal or go for breakfast. And I'm like, wow, I'm having a breakfast like a royalty here, because I'm in this golden palace, in this absolutely palatious restaurant, sitting, having a meal, looking like a king, you know? And that's a lifestyle you could enjoy in Brunei.
Nice, nice. Now, Keith, I know you have taught in quite a few places. I think now you're in Australia
I'm
and
down
you're in
under.
a specific region in Australia where the original Australians are. Tell me a little bit about that experience and about the people in that region.
So I have come full circle from Brunei, so I'm still in the Australasia region. So I now live and work in Australia. As you know, Australia, 8 states. There's Northern Territory, there's Western Australia, which I live, South Australia, Adelaide, the capital, New South Wales, Sydney, the capital, Victoria, Melbourne, the two famous places. Um, so I live in rural, remote Australia, WA, which is the biggest state. Now, WA is so massive that you could fit 200 Jamaica in there and still have space. That's how absolutely massive it is. As you know, Australia is big. But Australia has a small population, about 25, 26 million people, and they all largely live on the coast. So 80% of Australia live on the coastline because the interior land is so hostile. It's hostile to live. There's everything there to kill you: snakes, crocodiles, sharks, spiders. It's a hostile environment, and it's incredibly hot in the day and freezing cold at night. So when you go into the interland, I call it red dirt, you would drive for miles. In fact, where I live, in a place called the Pilbara, it's a mining region. So they mine iron ore, coal, bauxite, and it largely provide the wealth for Australia because it's very, very rich. um, in the Pilbara region is vast. The Pilbara alone is like the size of Texas. That's how big it is. The nearest town to
Mm,
me is 6 hours away. And
wow.
I tell you what, if you decide to drive to the nearest town, one, I wouldn't advise you to drive at nights, largely because kangaroos are attracted to the lights and they'll jump out in front of the car. But there's no reception sometimes, and you break down. Sometimes you drive and you see cars on the sideway abandoned. You know,
Mm,
Australia is a
right.
hostile environment out there. But I live in the Pilbara region and I work with the original people, the Aboriginals. These are the original people of the land. And when the convicts came over from the UK, when they sent the convicts to Australia, you know the history, they mistreated the Aboriginal and they're still living with this all this post trauma. But they are beautiful, beautiful people. Love Jamaica. They absolutely love Jamaica. They have lots of similarities to Jamaica as well. Um, in terms of
Nice.
their culture of respect for the elderly, this communal culture of a village. It takes a village to raise a child. And it's a beautiful experience up here, but it's not for the faint-hearted. It's a hostile, remote environment where
Mm,
the nearest city, the capital city in my state, is Perth, and to get to Perth by car is 21 hours.
wow. Wow. So you there, Bush?
Bush, bush, bush.
well, Keith. Listen, thank you for telling us about your experiences in Brunei and a little bit about in a remote Australia. I have a scenario for you.
Yes.
You you fly into Jamaica. You land in the airport. What is that first thing you're doing once you get out of the airport? Whether it be some people, it's a specific drink, it's a specific food, it's a dip in the water, and for some people, it's something else. What is that thing you're doing once you get out the airport?
Well, once I land, once the plane hovers over the mountain and I see the plane pass Portmore going to Kingston, I'm like, thank you, Lord. I'm there yard. Once I land and, my peoples come to pick me up, my family, I said, "Go find me a tasty. I want some tasty patty, you know?
So folks, if you're going to visit Keith in the remote part of Australia, the way to
Tasty.
bribe him, the way to
Yeah,
bribe him is tasty patty.
man, I tell
Again,
you.
thank you again for sharing your story. How do the folks in Brunei typically say goodbye in an informal way? That is.
Well, when we meet each other in the morning, we say "Selamat Patang," um, and we say "Selamat Tengal," which is goodbye. It's Malay, so
Right.
"Selamat," "Selamat"
Selamat.
is good. So "Selamat"
Uh-huh.
is good. So in the morning you say "Selamat Patang," and in the evening
Selamat
you say,
patang.
yeah, "Selamat Tinggal," goodbye.
All right. So Keith, selamat tinggal. Did I say it right?
Yes, "Selamat." Or some people cut it short and they say "Selamat."
All right. Selamat, my friend.